The year of our Lord 2025 is upon us, and despite writing these words in February, it sure feels like it's at least November with the amount of bullshit that's going on. To soothe our souls and ease our minds from the vicious vicissitudes of fortune as the world seems to be hellbent on heading from bad to worse, how about we reminisce about some of the finer motion pictures the past year brought us? Before we hop right in, I'll just preface this by saying that what you'll be hearing in the following minutes is, who would have thought, my personal top 10 of 2024, which means that it was conceived with a certain degree of bias and ignorance at play. I obviously don't and can't watch everything, even if I'd like to, plus what works for me might not resonate with you, and that's totally fine. I mean, that's why we have the comment section. One final thing, I'll be keeping this whole video spoiler free, so if you haven't seen some of the movies I'll be talking about, fret not, perhaps this will be the nudge required for you to check them out. The list is not in order, I don't like that sort of thing, so we'll be going alphabetically. I went into Challengers first and foremost for the banger soundtrack. I didn't know that on top of that I'll be served one of the most directorially accomplished works of the year, with dazzlingly inventive camera work and chemistry so palpable between its three main characters that it can only be defined as an inverse function of the wet fart that Cara Delevingne and Dane DeHaan had going on in Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. I'm a big fan of the work that Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross do scoring films, and they generally pick really great projects to be a part of, and Challengers is no exception. It's a story of a love triangle with professional tennis scene as a backdrop, and it's frankly electrifying. The whole movie is just pulsing with energy. That goes for the aforementioned camera work, the sharp editing, leading trio's performances, and of course the infatuating trance-like electronic score that has Reznor and Ross exploring starkly different avenues than what we've heard from them in recent projects like The Diary of a Smiths Fan. I of course mean Fincher's The Killer. Simply put, the whole package is remarkable. It's well directed, perfectly paced, and just oozes style and vigor. Go watch it if you haven't yet, just be prepared to see the soundtrack in your next Spotify Wrapped. Dune Part 2 is a film I reckon is very common in lists like this one, and there's a good reason for it, it's just spectacular. This is a film that, just like Part 1, in my eyes warrants a trip to your nearest IMAX screen, as it greatly benefits from the extended format. I don't think there's a lot that can be said about Dune that wasn't already said elsewhere, but for me what really sets Villeneuve's adaptation head and shoulders above all the others is how tactile and grounded it is. Shots of humming, whirling fans in the back of Harkonnen soldiers' helmets, tiny tubes that collect the condensed water in Fremen tents, the small details of the various machinery on Arrakis, it adds so much to my enjoyment. I also appreciate how the desert is shot so intimately, almost in a documentary manner, which is probably a byproduct of Villeneuve's past work. It's these details that lend the movie a rare characteristic where it's somehow very minimalist, yet also totally monumental and awe-inspiring. I have to say that I'm excited to see where the story goes in Dune Messiah, as there are certain liberties and changes compared to the book, especially concerning Paul and Shani's relationship, but I am absolutely sure Denis knows what he's doing. However, I also look forward to the day when he's done with the Dune universe, because I'm honestly itching for his return from this decade-long sci-fi epoch to those smaller stories, because I think it's precisely in films like Prisoners or Incendie that Denis' genius shines the brightest. From one desert to another, and also preferably from one IMAX screen to another, Furiosa is one of those movies that beg to be viewed that way for its sound design alone. This is a film with just the most orgasmic engine sounds, where the thunderous roar of the wasteland's petrol-powered beast reverberates your chest like you're on a racetrack. Being the first Mad Max movie without Mad Max, Furiosa still delivers the thrills and spectacle you'd expect, but it also serves a highly relevant commentary about how much damage a shallow populist like the Mantis can cause when people around are desperate. It's almost like you could draw some parallels between the apocalyptic Aussie wasteland and our current reality. However, even though Furiosa has all the dumb fun and crazy action you'd expect while simultaneously providing surprisingly thoughtful social commentary and a brutal yet touching origin story for its lead, it has to be said that most conversations about it will, one way or another, end up talking about Fury Road, I reckon. Because yes, Furiosa's telling a more complex tale, and yes, it's doing a lot of incredible world building, but oh my god, how do you top a movie that tells its entire story through perpetual action in 2 hours of non-stop breakneck chase and carnage? George Miller seems very conscious that achieving that is an almost impossible feat, and Furiosa never really attempts it. Instead, it broadens, expands, enhances, and gives more context to what Fury Road had set up. And that's what every good prequel should do. I saw the TV Glow, Jane Shanbrun's sophomore feature film, is one of my pleasant discoveries this year, and given the current political climate in the US, also may be one of the most important inclusions on this list. A tale about a pair of teenage misfits bonding over a shared fascination with a late-night TV show, this is a movie with a big heart that takes its Lynchian influence and dream logic, combines it with a very intimate portrayal of the struggle many members of the queer and trans community go through every day, and wraps it in a blanket of neon lights and VHS aesthetics. What I appreciate the most about it is how deeply and authentically it captures a sense of longing, unfulfillment, and detachment that from time to time we all go through. It's clear that this is cinema that will be appreciated the most by the queer folks, but its appeal goes far beyond that. It conveys the kind of emotion that speaks to all the weirdos, oddballs, and freaks who, at some point in their life, felt left on the sidelines, misunderstood, ostracized. Honestly, I have no idea why I like it. While Love Lies Bleeding made perhaps its biggest splash in the media later on thanks to a certain moviegoer in Detroit,
He's gonna kill her, man! He's gonna kill her!
Your move, creep.
it caught my eye immediately with its first trailer that made it look like a great mix of Nick Refn-esque neon-soaked dark thriller and a lighter 80s action comedy with a romantic twist, which honestly sounds like a killer combo and is actually quite good summary of the vibe it has. It mixes seemingly antithetical genre tropes and effortlessly drifts from disturbing themes and imagery to hilarious dark humor. It borrows from the greats like Thelma and Louise, but then throws in some borderline Cronenberg-esque body horror for good measure and tops it all up with a lot of charm of its own to create something that feels familiar yet fresh. And thanks to its tighter runtime, it never runs out of tricks or risks overstaying its welcome. Just a solid, fun film all around. I don't think I can put into words just how impressed I am by Dev Patel's directorial debut, because what he achieved with Monkey Man is nothing short of incredible. With production plagued by little catastrophes on a pretty much daily basis, it's a small miracle the film even got made. Not only did the crew have to move the whole shoot last minute as COVID hit, losing all the work made on location scouting prior, they also had to navigate around the lack of funds with clever workarounds. Which means that there are shots captured on iPhones and GoPros that made it to the final cut, and sets that had to be rebuilt in the middle of an action scene because they just couldn't afford building it all. And yet none of these struggles detract from the film. If you watched Monkey Man without reading anything about its budget and production, you'd leave the cinema thinking this was a polished, high-budget action blockbuster. It's a film that simply kicks ass. The action scenes are visceral and beautifully choreographed, the soundtrack's brilliant, and the atmosphere just sucks you in, and on top of that, it has so much heart and soul, and unlike many action roms, it truly has something to say. Great film. Glad it got its well-deserved theatrical run once Jordan Peele's production company stepped in, because this was way too good of a movie to be put straight to streaming. Nosferatu is the first but not the last movie on this list where I'm cheating a bit, because here in Slovakia it opened shortly after New Year's, so technically this is a 2025 watch for me, but considering in the US it premiered on Christmas, I decided to put it here anyway. There's one more film like that on the list, and also a few that are technically 2023 releases, but only hit cinemas internationally in 2024, so hopefully you'll be able to stomach that. Not like you can do anything about it anyway. It's actually not even a top 10 list if you bother counting it, but Nosferatu now. If you've seen my Hellblade retrospective, you'll know that I really like all Eggers' films, and Nosferatu is no exception. Although for me personally, this is not Eggers at his best. I've already said I'm not a fan of exact ordered lists, but I can say that if I were to rank his feature films, there'd be two groups. The first one would contain The Witch and The Northman, and the second one would be The Lighthouse and Nosferatu. I think one of the reasons why I don't vibe with Nosferatu as much is that I feel like it was a bit lacking in what I typically highly value with Eggers, and that is authenticity and respect for the historical periods his films are set in. And while the production and costume design are once again top-notch, I can't help but be irked by the frankly immersion-breaking geography. In the opening minutes there's a huge title card saying Germany 1838. Germany 1838. Where? What? It's 1838. What the fuck is Germany, Robert? And honestly, it doesn't get any better after that when we see Nicholas Hoult journey from the coast of what is either North or Baltic Sea in Prussia somewhere to Carpathian wilderness, presumably on the southeast border of Austro-Hungary on a horse, which is quite the odyssey, yet then he somehow also manages the journey back while suffering terrible fevers. Somebody's an exceptional horse rider, I guess. Worst of all, then Count Steal Your Girl gets to Prussia on a ship which, well, I presume is an option, but it makes about as much sense as using a pogo stick for that journey. I mean, ask 100 Romanians how they get to Lübeck and you won't hear by boat once. Obviously, I realize a plague ship makes for a much more dramatic entrance than a worn-down coach would, and it makes perfect sense in case of Bram Stoker's original Dracula that's set in London, but here it's upsetting the little annoying history and geography nerd within me. Oh, if my rant somehow made you wonder why am I even listing Nosferatu here when all I do is bash the transportation methods, it's because I love it, it's great. But everyone can tell you that, however not everyone can lose their shit about tiny details barely relevant to the overall story, so that's the niche I'm serving. Also, Lily Rose Depp, wow, amazing performance, Willem Dafoe slaying as usual, stellar as ever, and Ralph Ineson, yeesh, I won your voice, good sir. Perfect Days follows Hirayama, a toilet cleaner in Tokyo, living his simple life as a series of unexpected encounters reveal more about his past and make him reflect on some of his decisions. If there's one film on this list that I'd advise everyone to watch, it's this one. Especially now that everything seems to be falling apart and we're surrounded by so much negativity, Perfect Days relays a simple but all the more important message that happiness is in the little things, that fulfillment can be found in the tiniest of rituals and everyday conversations with people around us, and just how much joy there is to be discovered when you slow down and have a look around. It's also perhaps the most Wim Wenders move ever to be able to find inspiration in the form of public toilets and channel that to craft such poignant character study. This is a movie that heals. It's a cup of chicken soup for the soul, so if you haven't seen this one, it's high time to change that. We're staying in Japan for a little while longer because this next spot belongs to Miyazaki's The Boy and the Heron. Now, I'm one picky motherfucker when it comes to anime. Satoshi Kon, Makoto Shinkai, Mamoru Oshii, that's a quality bar I'm looking for. So, of course, Studio Ghibli and the master himself, Miyazaki, are right up there. I mean, this channel's called The Way It Is, partially in reference to my beloved Spirited Away, which is honestly one of the key formative cinematic experiences of my childhood, so of course, when I had the chance to see Miyazaki's swan song on the big screen early last year, I jumped at it immediately. As it often is with his films, there are many layers to Boy and the Heron. It can be painstakingly dissected and analyzed for its themes of processing loss and grief, its parallels to Miyazaki's own experiences, and his attitude towards creative work. Or you can simply kick back and get slowly carried away on the waves of boundless imagination that has always been the staple of Ghibli films. It's a tough task to make films that are profoundly impactful for people of all ages and walks of life, and no one does it quite like Studio Ghibli. Monumental, that's the word you'll find front and center on the movie posters for this film, and oh my god, while I usually tend to die inside a bit every time a buzzword like that is brought up, iconic being the prime example of just how profaned these adjectives can become, it actually does an exceptionally good job of capturing the essence of the Brutalist. It's a film that feels like it doesn't really fit into the current zeitgeist. It's quite anachronistic, like it was made in a different time when these grand period dramas were still a hot commodity. Focusing on the darker side of the American dream following the immigrant experience of its main character Laszlo, a Hungarian-born Jewish Holocaust survivor and a Bauhaus alumnus, it's a brilliant tale that works both on micro level, where it follows this exceptional, earnest, but ultimately flawed and deeply human individual as he navigates his new reality on foreign soil, all the while he's coming to terms with the trauma he's gone through, and also on the macro level, where it examines the seductiveness in the heart of American society that's so profoundly rooted in the capitalist axioms on the base of which it operates. A few more rapid-fire bullet points to add. The film looks insanely good, doubly so when you look at its budget. It's shot on VistaVision and it lends the movie a rare quality that's hard to put into words. The wide shots of buildings and spaces are simply stunning, as you'd expect, but surprisingly also the close-up character shots are incredibly pleasing to look at, as there's very little lens distortion. I also love the film grain, it gives the frame a very specific look that really fits the period, plus there's weird magic in how the characters in the foreground integrate with the backdrop. It really has to be seen. The runtime might seem daunting for some, but the intermission midway through makes it easily digestible and separates the film into two drastically different parts that complement each other so well. Killers of the Flower Moon could learn a thing or two in this aspect. The acting is top-notch throughout. Adrian Brody is spectacular, so is Felicity Jones, but really my absolute favorite performance of the year perhaps is Guy Pearce in this. Even though you know the charisma is just a shallow facade, you just can't help but be enamored by the man. Also, I was seriously taken aback by just how convincing Brody's and Jones' Hungarian was. I'm no Magyar, but as a Felvideg resident, my ears are no strangers to spoken Hungarian, and to be honest, I found their Hungarian more authentic and convincing than the accents while speaking English. No idea where Hungarians stand on this though, so if any of you watching are from Hungary, be sure to let me know in the comments. Danish director and writer Nikolaj Arcel has unfortunately seriously stumbled when under the Hollywood limelight with his less than ideal Dark Tower adaptation a few years ago. The film did okay in the box office, but was widely panned by critics and audiences alike. This disappointment saw Arcel return home to Denmark, and return he did indeed. In a wise decision, his next movie would see him return to period drama, a genre where he previously proved his chops with Royal Affair. For The Promised Land, a true story about Captain Ludwig Kahlen, who sets up to tame and cultivate the dry Danish heats, and in doing so comes into conflict with nobleman Deshinko, he once again joined forces with the fabulous Mads Mikkelsen, and the result is one of the most powerful historical dramas of recent years. Honestly, I'd love to talk about it in more detail, but I think it's for the best to end my pitch here, so those of you watching who haven't seen it can go in with as little knowledge as possible. This film has everything you could want from a good period drama and is well worth a watch. Alright, so there goes my top 11. Do you agree, disagree, and what does your list of last year's favorites look like? Definitely do tell me in the comment section, I'm already looking forward to reading that. So thank you for watching, you know all the classic YouTube jest, so do that if you can, and I'll be seeing you, knowing myself, a few months down the line once I finally get to editing of a video for a script I've written ages ago. I'm busy and slow. Oh, and I'm on Blue Sky, I'm on Patreon, if any of that sounds interesting to you, links are in the description, and with that said, I'm signing off.